Welcome to MedHeads, the weekly show that brings a biopsychosocial focus to issues of the day, along with special guests who will showcase their expertise and enthusiasm about their field of practice. Your host, Dr. Fergal Armstrong.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Fergal Armstrong and welcome to today's MedHeads. We have with us Craig Payne, our regular guest. He's a group facilitator. Hello Craig, how are you?
Yeah, great, Fergal. Great to be here again.
Yeah, great. Thanks for coming back. So I thought today we'd talk about routine and how it applies to recovery. What's your initial thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, routine's just, it's a cornerstone to recovery. Getting that structure and focus into the day, into the week, into the year, really important.
Yeah. Now, I've heard you say that routine has to be balanced. What do you mean by balanced routine?
Well, I think it comes down to a lot of things throughout the day. Making sure that diet's good, sleep's good, but also making sure you're getting some fun in there as well.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks about routine and it's chocking the day full, but you want to be making sure you've got some space in there as well. So and to be constantly striking that balance.
Right. So routine is not boring, because we all think routine is boring, but routine doesn't have to be boring. You can factor in pleasurable activities as part of your routine, and that's not a bad thing, is it? Especially in recovery.
No. Yeah, absolutely, and it has to be done. And I think people, because a lot of the time people think about recovery and they think about losing all the fun in life or that side of things. But you can really put that in there, and you got to make sure you do, because if you don't, you're going to lose focus and you're going to start to look for the relief elsewhere again.
So people in recovery had a previous experience of having their routine dominated by drug use. And initially that drug use was fun, and then it became a compulsion, but there was an element of fun drug routine. And now you've got, what you're saying is, if I'm hearing you right, is you've got to replace fun with fun. And so what examples could you give that would be safe replacements for in one's routine in a recovery journey?
Well, I think it comes down to a lot. Just as far as exercise, connections with friends, what you do with those friends at the time. So maybe you're going out for breakfast, maybe you're catching up in the afternoons, maybe you're going for a bike ride instead. Joining a music group, getting into some sort of building hobbies or anything like that, just getting in touch with things that have dropped off for you that you maybe used to do before. And let's not forget that this is a natural sort of feeling you're getting now, not that chemical high that was coming from things before.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that I'm passionate about is this concept of purposeful activity as an aid to recovery. So what you're describing are examples in your clinical practice of people engaging in their own purposeful recovery. Purposeful activity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what is difficult to talk about it with it all and come up with the specific examples, because everyone's different and this whole process is individual. And it's working out what works for you along the way. Like we were just chatting before, I bought myself a set of drums a few weeks ago to teach myself to try and use those. And that gives my day some purpose and structure and a little bit of fun in there as well.
Right. Now, routine doesn't happen on its own. You've got to work at it. I mean, I've heard self-help gurus say, oh, you can make a new habit in 7 days, 21 days, 28 days, but it's hard to change your routine. It takes time and effort. What would you say to that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think that's where we need to keep things simple at first.
Yeah.
And, you don't just wake up one morning with a new routine. You don't just wake up with a new focus and filling your day with all these purposeful activities. It takes time to figure out what that stuff is again and to build the motivation to do it, to get the evidence pattern that, hey, actually, when I do this, I feel good. So I'll continue to do that. And just finding what works for you takes time.
Yeah, it does take time. But there's also the possibility of failure in that, isn't there? Because new ideas have to be explored, and not everything that you try will work. And what do you say to those people who think, oh, you know, I might try it, but if I don't like it, then it'll be a waste of my time, it'll be a failure, so I won't even bother. What would you say to people in that thought process?
Yeah, so I think preparing for that and going into this with the mindset that not everything you do is going to work, not everything you do is going to become part of your regular routine. And
Yeah.
I think when we think routine as well, we fall into the trap of thinking it every day, you know, and daily. And some things fall into our routine as an everyday thing, and they're really important. You know, other things are a weekly thing, a monthly thing, and you know, so it takes time to build this up because you can't have the same routine every day because every day is going to throw up different challenges. What you can work out is what's really important to you
Yeah.
and change your day around that.
So in someone in early recovery, what should be the priority for them and their routine, in your opinion?
Recovery first, like, yeah, and that's, yeah, recovery first. So, but what falls into that is really simple things like diet, sleep, and say meetings or appointments with counselors and things. So, and maintaining connections through that. But I think definitely it starts with the simple stuff, like making sure, for some people, it's getting up and getting out of bed in the morning and getting
Right.
up at a reasonable time, not sleeping in,
Yeah.
eating breakfast. I can't stress the importance of breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
And is
and
that because it's a
healthy
routine?
food throughout there. It's because it's a routine, but your
Yeah.
body needs it as well. And this is the stuff that'll help stave off the cravings
Yeah.
because, you know, uh, everyone, well, a lot of people would have heard of the HALT acronym, you know, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And
Right.
hungry is there first for a reason, you know, because
Yeah.
hunger, these are all the things that get confused with craving. So the more you can set up your day to alleviate those things,
Mm-hmm.
the better place you're going to be to get through.
Right. Right. I also, I mean, you know, if we're talking about HALT, you started this, so now we're going to deviate to HALT a little bit. But I mean, I've heard of hunger, anger, loneliness, tiredness. I've heard of also another A, anxiety, which I suppose is the same
Yep.
as anger, and also T, tired but thirsty. I think that
Thirsty.
a lot of people, especially with alcohol, used to sort of, they cannot tell the difference between a thirst for booze and a thirst just for water. I mean, is that something that you've come across in your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just even the action as well of, you know,
Yeah,
raising the arm and having that action all day. So if you
yeah,
can replace that with water, then absolutely. And yeah, and the other one, if you want to put the S on the end, is stressed. But yeah, and I think this is one of the things with the conversation too, Fergal, is there is this crossover between everything. And yeah, but definitely thirst is in there,
yeah,
and yeah, we just want to be making sure that we're looking after our bodies.
yeah.
You know,
And
because if you're
so,
looking after your body, you're on a good track.
yeah. So too is loneliness. I mean, loneliness is in there for a reason, and that alludes to the importance of social connection, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
And again, this is, I think, why this comes down to the individual and how much social interaction you need each day. You know,
yeah,
some people need to be on the phone all day talking to people. Some people really like their alone time and love their space,
yeah,
but you've got to watch that doesn't fall over into isolation, which is, you know,
yeah,
a dangerous place to be too.
yeah. There is a fine line between being alone and being lonely, isn't there?
Yeah, very much
Yeah,
so. And
and
this is where working out that pattern for you and working out what structure you're going to need is,
yeah,
you know, and then how you can implement that is
yeah,
the next thing as well, because it's great to identify certain times throughout a day where your cravings might be at their worst, or you know, so maybe you need to, like, I just know with me, yeah, 4:30 in the afternoon used to be a horrible time of the day. Every
right,
day it was a real struggle. So putting some exercise in at that point, or even an afternoon snack, like sort of eating at that time and keeping busy and making the food so it occupied some more time.
Yeah.
They were ways to get through there. So, your routine will help you identify the patterns
Yeah.
where your cravings are maybe at their worst,
Yeah.
and then help you find activities to put in there.
And so that's why
to benefit
routine
that.
is so important, because it allows you to structure protective elements in your life that will prevent relapse and will facilitate recovery. So it's all about structuring your recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
making sure that the recovery comes first above
Right.
everything else.
Right.
Because
So go
as we
on.
said, yeah. No, I
Yeah,
was
no,
going
go
to say,
on.
because as we said before, it takes time to establish this routine.
Yeah.
And once you work out what works for you, this is where it helps your boundaries,
Tell me more
because
about
you
that.
can, well,
How does
for instance, if I know that 4:30 in the afternoon is a dangerous time for me,
right.
I know that running off with mates at 4:30 in the afternoon probably isn't going to be the best thing to do.
Right.
So I know that that's an area of the day where I need to find things to fulfill myself and activities to fill myself. Or, is that where I call someone? Is that where I go to a meeting? Those sort of things. And so if anyone wants me to get involved in things, or if things pop up within life that might need me at that time, I can look at it and I can say, is this going to be the best time of day for me? And if it's not, then I can help put a boundary in and say, no, not at that time of day, maybe
Yeah.
later, maybe earlier,
Yeah.
and just figure it out from there.
Yeah, and you can only do that if you understand your own internal routine, your biorhythms as they relate to your external environment, and that's why routine is so important. But moving beyond the early stages of recovery, we then come to the concept of adjustment, don't we? I mean, how do you adjust your routine, and why would you want to adjust your routine?
To keep challenging yourself, to keep moving forward, and to complete that, to prevent the complacency and boredom kicking in. Because I don't know I think for me, when things become too routine, when things become it just gets a bit blah. And
Right.
then that's when I'm starting to look for maybe that thing to spice up life a little bit more. And that can unfortunately be substances at times, we just need to keep moving forwards and keep challenging. So if you're working out that, you're getting those feelings of boredom and not being challenged, then need to keep progressing and setting new challenges.
Within the overall context of a daily routine and a weekly routine and a monthly routine, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and because
Yeah.
you've hopefully by then identified the cornerstones and the absolute structures of what needs to be in place, and then you know how you can fit things in around there. It's not just dropping them in on top of, it's how you can best fit them in to maintain your pattern of recovery at the same time.
Right. And in your experience, working with people, how long does it take, do you reckon, to actually establish a routine in recovery, in the early phase, the middle phase, and later phases? How long does that take, do you reckon?
Well, it can be done over the course of a few weeks.
Right.
We see through the detox. We see through things where there's I've got first-hand knowledge that over the course of a few weeks, I've watched people change their sleep patterns, change their eating patterns, fill their days with activities, and their reflection of things is, okay, now I can see how this works. Now I can see the importance of getting up early. Now I can see the importance of eating, and so there's a start. And so, if you're just getting out of bed at the same time each morning, just eating some breakfast, just doing these things. So it can be done over the course of a couple of weeks. But once they've got that mastered, then it's adding new things in. And and that's where work changes, life changes. These things just throw up, and then we work out how to best fit those changes into our routines.
I mean, I was going to say cure, but I think I better say recovery. I view the pinnacle of recovery as not using illicit drugs and paying taxes. And paying taxes for me is being able to actually work in a job that pays you enough that you need to pay taxes, that you go into some kind of tax bracket. Now, you can't just go from a week or 2 weeks in a rehab program to gainful employment. I mean, in one easy step. It just doesn't work like that, does it? So what's your view on that transition? And how does routine play a role in that transition?
Yeah, well, I think if with the right routine, you'll hopefully have a great structure and in that some supports as well.
Yeah.
And so you're relying on other people to give you feedback. You're relying on other people to assist you to put these things into place, and and to work through the challenges of that. Going back to work is a really big challenge in not just early recovery, but in recovery in general.
Yeah.
With the problems that are thrown up for it. So to have people around to be talking through that with, and maybe that becomes part of your routine, is that once a day, once every few days, you're calling someone and you're talking to them about the work challenges. I think this is where sponsors are really great sometimes as well, because they've got a pretty good understanding of you by this stage, and they can help you identify the patterns that are working and where things might be dropping off, and the changes in thought processes. And so definitely having people to help keep you accountable through those changes it is vital.
And that means regular contact, and also, I mean, I think that the routine of connecting with peer support groups, be they smart recovery based or 12-step based, that in and of itself, that creates a routine. I go to my meetings every day or every second day, or and that, I think, is so important, that kind of regularized, diarized routine interaction with support networks. That to me is one of the most important inputs that allows people to transition from, during their recovery journey, into tax-paying citizens, if it's appropriate for them. I'm not saying that everyone in recovery has to end up, working in a tax-paying job, but I think it's, for some people at least, it's an appropriate aspiration. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, again, it comes back to that thing of purpose and meaning. And gives your day some purpose and meaning, and the supports that you've got around you to assist that are really vital. And this is that thing of routine is definitely about pattern, and so there's a pattern to your life. And if that is regular meetings, if that is regular catch-ups with people, this is where it also helps identify the danger signs.
Tell us about those.
Because, well, if the routine starts to drop off and you start to miss meeting, if you're not getting out, if you're staying in bed an hour longer, if you're skipping breakfast, if you're not going to this appointment, if these are the things that start to drop off and there's no one else around to see it, it's really easy to continue that drop off and for that negative mindset to kick in. So we need people around us to help us establish routine, and most importantly, maintain that routine. And that comes with peer groups, that comes with just friends and family. If you're missing family appointments, if you're not calling mum anymore, hey, maybe there's something behind that needs to be looked at.
Yeah. So what you're alluding to, if I'm hearing you right, is that a reduction in the level of routine is perhaps one of the early signs of relapse. And in fact, a loss of routine is the gateway to relapse. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
definitely. It plays a massive part. There's the old saying that relapse doesn't happen the moment you sit you sit in the bar stool and you drink that beer. Relapse has been building for quite some time before that. That's the moment it happens, but it really began a long time ago. And if that's in the loss of routine, if that's where things start to drop off, they're danger signals.
I mean, I've heard you use a phrase before, which I think is highly, highly relevant to this discussion. I've heard you say that so-and-so gave themselves permission. And that starts with giving yourself permission to not go to an appointment, doesn't it? Or to slowly erode the outer circle of your routine.
Yeah. And and it's, I don't need to go
Yeah,
to meetings anymore. I don't need to do this. I can get through without.
yeah,
And yeah, you're opening that door. You're really just like saying, hey, here, relapse coming in. And this is why the overall nature of accountability and structure and routine is so important. You start to give these things away that have been proven to work within your life for so long
yeah,
and proven to help you get to whatever point in your recovery you're at.
yeah,
So making adjustments to that needs to be a really balanced and measured decision.
yeah,
And
yeah,
again, I suppose that's where it comes back to balance that we was talking about before, is that
yeah.
as we need to add more things into our life, other
Mm,
things need to drop off, and the
yeah,
frequency of these things. And there's no right or wrong with that. Unfortunately, it's trial and error. And so having the good supports around to help you do that, they're going to be, again, be really important.
So it's developing and maintaining routine is challenging. It's hard work. It's certainly not easy. And I suppose what you're saying, it's a gradual evolutionary process, because the routine that you have at the beginning of your recovery is not going to be the same as the routine that you have in the middle of your recovery and towards the maintenance phase of your recovery. Because you are, as you say, things that, if your routine is simply not to use by the time your head hits the pillow that night, that your routine in that day is going to be full of early recovery work, hourly, if not daily interaction with peer support. But then as you start changing the way your life, or the way that your life responds to your recovery, and as you put more meaningful activities and more purposeful activities, and then maybe you don't have the time to see or talk to a peer support or some form of social support every hour or every 2 hours, because you're actually doing your activity, and that's okay. That's what you're saying, isn't it? It's okay. But as you said, the balance has got to be there where there's enough support ongoing to facilitate your personal evolution. So long as that change in your life is A, for the positive, and B, does not smother out the essential supports that you need to maintain that. So, is that, have I got the right picture from what you're trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's the awareness of how it's going to affect your life.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, as I said, this is what happens. This is how we progress. This is how we keep going. Exactly. What we do in early recovery isn't necessarily the frequency we're doing things in later recovery. But just being aware of what might happen if you're not engaged in this as often, or if you're not engaged in things so much. And I think one of the things is you touched on there, positive change, and
yes,
we're making positive changes to the life. And these are generally things that are going to come about where you are happy to involve other people in the decision making.
yeah,
And if they're negative activities, if they're things that possibly have got some danger associated with them, they're the things that you're going to tend to hide from people. And
right,
if you're doing that,
yeah,
hey, maybe there's something to that as well. So,
yeah.
and you'll
So,
notice the changes.
what do you mean by that? You'll notice the changes. What does that mean?
Well, I think you notice the change in thinking patterns. Notice the change in just general well-being. There's things like, I know people who every morning are up early to exercise. One guy in particular, every morning up at 5:30 to run 10Ks, no matter whether he's had 3 hours sleep or 8 hours sleep. And but generally looks after his sleep, I might add. But that's part of his day, because if he doesn't do it, his general feeling throughout the rest of the day isn't great. Like he's not in the same thought process. He's not in the same mood. And it just doesn't kick his day off right. So you notice those little thinkings where negative thinking comes in, and the disappointment with losing in touch with the routine.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to touch on the idea of, how do you know that an activity is good for you or bad for you, and how do you know the difference between alone time and the isolation that then engenders that downward spiral into relapse. Just reiterate those points for me.
I think you can find out this stuff by talking to other people. And I
Yeah,
think this is the importance of talking to other people and having the connections around within your life. Because our minds can tell us a very different story. And
what do you mean
they
by
can
that?
say, it's like the relapse sitting in the corner doing push-ups. Because like with the addiction sitting in the corner, just doing the same, nah, don't worry, mate, everything's okay. You can keep dropping this stuff, everything's okay. But I think within ourselves, there's this, we start to feel out of alignment a little bit. Something's not sitting right, and
Yeah,
getting that trust back in, whether it's a gut feeling or this head, heart, gut. That head, heart,
yeah,
and gut have to be in alignment.
all right.
And if they're not in alignment, I think in general we know it, but we just don't take action on it. And we
Yeah.
keep thinking we'll be okay, we'll be okay, we'll be okay.
And what do you
But
do? What do you do if you're starting to think like that? Because that's a very personal thing. People know it's the early signs of failure, relapse, horror, awful. What do you do? How can someone in that situation stop that? What can you do about it?
the most important thing to do is to talk about it.
Yeah, you've got to
And
talk about it with someone who understands you, your sponsor or your peer support worker,
sponsor,
your
peer
friend.
support, there's friend, there's
Yeah,
plenty of there's the self-help lines as well.
yeah, yeah,
Completely anonymous if you want to call that way.
yeah,
But it's about sharing it. If you
yeah,
try and take it all on yourself,
yeah,
that's a massive danger sign.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
as we know, my best thinking got me into addiction. My best thinking will keep me trapped there, will keep me going
yeah,
back. I need other people to
yeah,
challenge that, to change that.
yeah,
And so, and the difference between isolation and space and alone time, it's a feeling, and I think you know it. And for me, like I've journaled every day in recovery,
yeah,
and that's where that shows up because I can't bullshit myself.
yeah, yeah. So the most important, I just want to reiterate this point, and I really appreciate your wisdom on this line. If you're feeling that way, the way that you combat your permission to relapse is by sharing it. Now, I
Yeah.
just wanted to bring on the final point I want to talk about is actually, I think one of the reasons why we need routine is because we only have so much cognitive processing power, right? And having a routine means that we don't actually have to think too hard about what we have to do or how we have to fill our day. And resisting relapse, certainly in the early phases of recovery, requires so much energy, so much cognitive focus that we really don't have the time to think about what am I going to plan? What have I got to do with my day? Okay, I might have lunch. I'm going to miss breakfast because who have I got to meet? Whereas if you have that routine, certainly in early recovery, you know what you've got to do. Your brain doesn't have to think about it, and therefore it allows you to engage your limited cognitive processing power to entirely focus it on your recovery. And that's one of the reasons why I think we all have routines, is because a large part of our activity throughout the day is actually highly efficient use of our brains in pattern recognition, so that we don't actually have to think about what we do. We just know it instinctively because we've done it so many times before. And that then goes to the background and then allows us to use our power of thought to focus on whatever task that we're doing that requires us to think on a higher level. And that's where I think purposeful and meaningful activity comes in, because that purposeful meaning activity absorbs us, focuses our cognitive power, but can only do so when we're not using our cognitive power to work out how we're going to eat 3 meals a day and go to bed on time. Does that ring true with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of suppose I hadn't balanced it from that angle, but it certainly does, because
Yeah,
addiction's it's automatic pilot.
Yes,
you get up
exactly.
and you're focused
Automatic
and you're
pilot.
going this way. So it's
Yeah.
flipping
Yes.
putting a
Yes.
different pilot in charge,
Yeah. Automatic
and
pilot. I was struggling, but you've just given it to me. Our routine allows us to have a good automatic pilot to then allow us to think
yeah,
about what we really want to do in life.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and to not use that all that emotional energy
Yes.
and be fatigued from that.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
so your decision making ability is much better because it's focused there's more energy associated with it, and it's a lot more personal.
Yeah, Craig, as usual, you can put it so much better than I can. That's absolutely great. Automatic pilot, I love it. I love it. Unfortunately, yet again, we've run out of time. We've got so much to talk and so little time to do the talking in. But look, can you think of one message of hope for anyone watching, thinking about routine and recovery? What one message would you give
Yeah,
them?
look, I think keep it simple. It's there's that great speech that starts with making your bed in the morning,
Yeah,
and just in those early stages, keep it simple and keep it personal to you. Make sure
yeah.
there's some connection in there.
Keep it simple. I love it. Craig, thank you so much.
Cheers, Fergal.
That's it for today's MedHeads. My name's Dr. Fergal Armstrong. We'll see you next time.